Exploring aspects of trauma is not an unfamiliar technique in contemporary literature. Many novels, such as Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and Eleanor and Park, explore the struggles and disadvantages created when experiencing trauma. Emma Donoghue, in her award-winning novel Room, however, takes a different approach when discussing trauma, exploring a storyline where the trauma of the characters is normalized. Room, which was published in 2010, explores the life of Jack and his ma, who live in a 12 by 12 garden shed after his ma was kidnapped and raped 7 years ago. Jack, who is 5 years old and never stepped foot outside the shed, is content with his life in their room. To him, it is normal. There is no outside life, only TV world and room world. In this novel, told through Jack's point of view, we see that the life he and his ma live, while normal to him, is traumatic, unethical, and morally wrong. Through the use of dialogue and setting, Donoghue cleverly normalizes the everyday traumas of Jack's life and creates a storyline which is intriguing, fast-paced, and emotionally raw for readers. As mentioned before, one of the main aspects which normalizes the trauma in Room is the use of dialogue. Jack's inner monologue and thought process throughout the novel is both fascinating and concerning to the welfare of him and his ma. As our point of view character, we only experience their trauma through the eyes of Jack, who is not aware it is occurring. An interesting technique which Donoghue uses to pull this off effectively is the use of assertion within Jack's inner thoughts. When describing a scene or discussing something which has occurred, Jack does so with active language, displaying a level of authority and confidence for what is happening around him. Take this scene where Jack is watching Dora. This morning it's Dora. Yippee! She's on a boat that nearly crashes into a ship. We have to wave our arms and shout, "Watch out!" But Ma doesn't. Ships are just TV, and so is the sea, except when our poos and letters arrive. Or maybe they actually stop being real the minute they get there. Alice says if she's in the sea, she can go home by the railway. That's old-fashioned for trains. Forests are TV, and also jungles, and deserts, and streets, and skyscrapers, and cars. Animals are TV, except ants, and spider, and mouse. But he's gone now. Germs are real, and blood. Boys are TV, but they kind of look like me. The me in the mirror that isn't real either. Just a picture. In this passage, we see Donoghue using assertive language to showcase to readers how normalized this traumatic situation is for Jack. She uses words like are and that instead of I think and could be, adding a level of authority to the information being shared. The assertion that comes from these words highlights just how normalized this trauma is for Jack, as he can explore his surroundings without doubt or fear. The use of the question, or maybe they stop being real the minute they get there, also highlights Jack's confidence in his surroundings. Even though Donoghue has him ask a question about his lifestyle, it still presents a level of authority around this information, as it is analysing parts of his life which are minuscule and unimportant. Instead of having him ask why they send letters through the toilet or why they cannot leave Room, Donoghue instead has him ask of something which is unimportant, which again shows his contempt and confidence around their lifestyle, therefore normalising their trauma to readers. The use of Jack's informal language in Room also highlights this idea of normalized trauma. In addition to his assertive language, Donoghue also incorporates informal language into Jack's dialogue to create a vulnerability and childlike innocence. This showcases to readers the underdevelopment of Jack's character, which ultimately assists in normalizing his trauma. We see this in the first few pages of the novel, in a conversation between Jack and his ma. I look down at Rug with her red and brown and black all zigging around each other. There's the stain I spilled by mistake getting born. You cutted the cord and I was free, I tell Ma. Then I turned into a boy. Actually, you were a boy already. She gets out of bed and goes to thermostat to hot the air. As we can see from this passage, Jack's dialogue often incorporates sections of informal language, not only to capture his voice as a 5-year-old, but also to assist in normalizing his trauma. Donoghue, when writing Jack, uses words like zigging and cutted, as well as the phrases hot the air and getting born. This language shows his inability to comprehend and the development that his brain is still undergoing. It creates an empathy for Jack and his situation, as we as readers can see his lack of understanding. Again, when he says, "Then I turned into a boy," we see his lack of comprehension for real-world concepts, showcasing once again his vulnerability and lack of knowledge. By incorporating this, Donoghue creates a character which is more susceptible to normalized trauma, as Jack's lack of knowledge in the first place leaves his development to be skewed by his surroundings and ongoing trauma. Jack's lack of knowledge also comes to play through the use of pop culture references in his dialogue. As Jack only knows the world through what he is shown in room or on TV, his perception is often skewed by popular culture. Take this conversation for example. Listen, Jack, I need to tell you another story. A true one? Totally true. You know how I used to be all sad? I like this one. Then I came down from heaven and grew in your tummy. Yeah, but see, why I was sad? It was because of room, says Ma. Old Nick, I didn't even know him. I was 19. He stole me. I'm trying to understand. Swiper no swiping, but I never heard of swiping people. From this conversation, we can see that Jack's Ma is trying to share some of her experience with Jack to help him understand their trauma. Donoghue showcases his lack of comprehension through the use of pop culture reference of swiper no swiping from Dora. The trauma of their situation is further normalised from this discussion, as Jack can only comprehend it through references that are known to him, which in this case is TV content. As seen in earlier examples, Jack also often refers to things Alice has said or done when describing his surroundings. Alice in this case refers to Alice in Wonderland, a book which Jack frequently reads in room. By showing that his only reference to most situations is through what Alice has seen, it again demonstrates his lack of knowledge to readers. Creating a character which is vulnerable and lacks comprehension in this novel assists with normalising the trauma, as it builds a character which is easily moulded and manipulated by their surroundings. Another aspect that Donoghue uses to normalise trauma in room is the setting and description. The first and probably most notable technique, which you may have already picked up on from the other examples, is the personification of furniture and objects inside the room. The following highlights this in a passage where Jack is playing. I measure more things with ruler, but it's hard to add up the numbers on my own. I do him end over end, and he's an acrobat of a circus. I play with remote, I point him at Ma and whisper, wake up, but she doesn't. Balloon is all squishy. She goes for a ride on prune juice bottle up near Skylight. They make the light all brownly sparkly. They're scared of remote because of his sharp end, so I put him in wardrobe and fold the doors shut. I tell all the things it's okay because Ma will be back tomorrow. In this passage, we can see that Donoghue has Jack refer to all the objects in room as living things. He refers to ruler and remote as he and balloon as she, bringing them to life in room. By characterizing his belongings, Donoghue further showcases the normalized trauma in which Jack lives, as his main interactions of the book are with objects. It isn't just his small toys which are personified either. As seen in earlier examples, the door, wardrobe, and lamp are also personified. By creating a space where Jack's closest relationships are with furniture and objects, readers can experience and understand his normalized trauma, as it shows a detachment and lack of connection towards people. It builds an unease, tension, and empathy for Jack, which carries through to the later sections of the novel, where we see Jack's separation anxiety towards these objects once he and his Ma escape. By creating a character which holds such a close relationship with objects, Donoghue is able to normalize their trauma, as the character has no outside connections to tell them it is anything but normal. In addition to personified objects, possibly the most recognized technique that Donoghue incorporates in room is the use of routine. Trauma narratives often incorporate a routine which highlights the major inconsistencies of the day-to-day of a person who is experiencing trauma. This is the same for room, with Jack at the beginning of the novel sharing his day-to-day activities. Monday is a laundry day. We get into bath with socks, underwears, my grey pants that ketchup squirted on, the sheets and dish towels, and we squish all the dirt out. Ma hots thermostat way up for the drying. She pulls clothes horse out from beside door and stands him open, and I tell him to be strong. I would love to ride him like when I was a baby, but I'm so huge now I might break his back. It would be cool to sometimes go smaller again and sometimes bigger like Alice. When we've twisted the water out of everything and hanged them up, Ma and me have to rip off our t-shirts and take turns pushing ourselves into a refrigerator to cool down. Lunch is bean salad, my second worst favourite. After nap we do scream every day, but not Saturdays or Sundays. We clear our throats and climb up on the table to be near a skylight, holding hands not to fall. We say, on your mark, get set, go. Then we open wide our teeth and shout, holler, howl, yowl, shriek, scream, the loudest possible. The routine that Donoghue creates contains elements which are unnatural and odd for a 5-year-old boy to help normalise the trauma in the novel. The line, Monday is a laundry day, we get into bath, shows a difference to the common nature of the chore. The uncommon nature of their tasks is further carried out through the drying of their clothes inside and having to stay cool in the refrigerator while doing so. But the most notable to the uncommon nature in this sequence is their activity of scream. This is not a normal occurrence in day-to-day life. Yet the line, every day except Saturdays and Sundays, shows it is just another daily task. The incorporation of an uncommon and even disturbing task into a routine normalizes the trauma of their situation, as it breaks the social norm. By showing that this is in fact a daily occurrence for Jack, readers can comprehend that Jack's trauma within room is normalized and for the most part a day-to-day activity. From what has been shown in these examples, we can see that Room does an excellent job at normalizing trauma within a piece. So, what can we do to emulate this same effect in our pieces? I think first and foremost, it is vital that you create a routine for your characters which breaks social norms. Just as Jack's daily schedule includes a scream activity, which is not a conventional task, your character's schedule should also include an unconventional task which displays trauma. Perhaps every day at 11 a.m., your character is forced to hide in a room for quiet time to avoid violence. The idea with building a routine is to create an oddity within an expected format to normalize their trauma. If you were to just mention the violence, it would not be as successful at normalizing, as the societal convention of a schedule creates a platform for the trauma being discussed to be normalized to both the reader and the character. Another way in which you could normalize trauma within your piece is to personify objects just as Donoghue does in Room. Like Jack, your character could be best friends or find an acquaintance in the furniture or objects surrounding them. By creating a relationship between your character and inanimate objects which have been personified, a detachment and lack of human connection is created within your character. The inability to speak to real people or lack of real people to talk to will become evident through these relationships and showcase to readers the trauma of a situation which is now normalized within your character's eyes. Finally, the dialogue and voice of your character is vital to achieving normalized trauma. The best way to achieve a normalized trauma effect through voice is through informal language. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean your character has to be a child like Jack in order to achieve this. Your character could simply just use informal language due to a lack of development over the trauma you're exploring. Informal language is simply in place to achieve the vulnerability and lack of development within your character, which is as a result of this trauma. If you really wanted to experiment, you could even move to the other end of the spectrum and create a character with extremely formal language as a result of the normalized trauma. Perhaps they cannot conceive humor or sarcasm and takes only literal meaning. The main focus, however, is to create a voice which showcases in some form an issue within development as a result of the trauma. To then build on that, once you have created a voice of vulnerability and underdevelopment, it is crucial to use it in the context of assertion. What I mean by this is, your character has to show, whether it be in their inner monologue or their dialogue with other characters, that they are confident and contempt in their knowledge and lifestyle. It is at this level that trauma will normalize, as the character's confidence will assist readers in believing that this is normal. If you create a voice with language that conveys vulnerability, yet delivery which conveys assertion, then you will be on your way to normalizing trauma in your piece. To help you understand these techniques further, I have written an example piece which implements them to the best of my ability. For some context, this piece is about a young girl whose mother is a drunk, constantly bringing terrible men home. The girl lives with her older sister and mother, and in the following passage is describing a night in her life. As you can see from this piece, I have tried to incorporate some of the techniques within it. The first technique used was informal language. I created a character which was young and vulnerable in order to help normalize their trauma. You can see from lines like, "The night is my worst favorite time of day," "Mr. Moon's light is whitey gold tonight," and "We play astronaut a lot because it's her favoritist." that this character represents a level of underdevelopment and vulnerability to assist in normalizing the trauma she undergoes. I then branched on from this with the use of assertion in the character's tone with "boys are bad persons and so are doctors." The use of this assertive language normalizes the tension and trauma which these two characters are going through, as it shows an authority around the descriptions and environment they are describing. Another technique which I used was the use of routine. While the whole piece is a short discussion of what happens during the routine, the line, "Fun time can only be for a few more minutes. When Mummy gets home, I have to run, fast as I can to cupboard and hide until Alice does the secret knock," points towards this idea of a routine. The explanations of what our character does during this time in the cupboard points out the oddities of their routine for readers. By having the opening seem as if the character is just getting annoyed at going to bed, before revealing that their nighttime routine involves hiding from their mother, readers' conventional thinking towards the routine is disrupted. With the assistance of the informal language and assertion, the reader can see how normalized this routine is for the characters. Finally, I also personified some of the objects surrounding the characters. As seen from the references to Mr. Moon, Mr. Sun, window, cupboard, and berry, we can see that this character lacks in emotional connections with other people. Though the character mentions a relationship with their sister, it is clear that many of the developing relationships and acquaintances of this character are with objects. This then helps to normalize the trauma as it shows the detachment and loneliness that this character sees as abnormal. In conclusion, trauma in any form should be written with respect and boundaries. When writing normalized trauma in particular, it is important to not go too far outside the bounds or else you run the risk of ruining the effect, or worse, causing offense. As long as you try to remain within the guidelines I have shared, it can be a fascinating topic to explore within your work. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for listening.